I opened our marriage, got pregnant, and now my family has disowned me, while my husband wants a divorce. I'm a 38-year-old woman. My husband, let's call him Ree, is 44. We got married when I was 19, just a month after I gave birth to our daughter, whom we'll call Libby. Libby is now 19, and almost a year later our son, whom we'll call Craig, was born. Both children now attend the same college, which is 5 hours away from us. Even in those early days, I also worked 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We have a lot of money, own our home and have a decent amount of savings. Our family was incredibly stable and my husband, kids, and I were an unbreakable team until I fell under the influence of a very manipulative person. It all started innocently enough. We have a beloved dog who is an integral part of our family. As I mentioned earlier, I work on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, so I'm home on Tuesdays and Thursdays. About 3 months ago, while at the park, I met a man, let's call him Leonard, and he's 37 years old. His dog and ours started playing together. Leonard mentioned that he'd seen me there on several occasions with my dog, but I couldn't recall ever seeing him before. Coincidentally, we started running into each other at the park every time I visited. One evening during dinner I mentioned my conversations with a man named Leonard from the dog park to my husband. I asked him if he had ever noticed Leonard there. My husband replied that he hadn't, and I informed him that Leonard's dog had become good friends with ours. We laughed about it and the subject was dropped. Time passed and then things between Leonard and I began to change. About 2 months ago while we were chatting at the dog park, Leonard mentioned that he had seen my dog before. The dog park. Leonard mentioned that he lived in a nearby luxury apartment complex. This complex was about 1/4 of a mile from the dog park and about 1/2 a mile from our house. I commented on how nice the apartments looked from the outside and asked him about their interiors. I mentioned that a friend of mine was considering renting there, which was true at the time. Leonard then suggested that I walk over to his apartment with my dog to take a quick look and take some pictures for my friend. I knew I should have politely declined. Leonard showed me around and I stayed for about 10 minutes, thanking him and mentioning that I had to go home. He then inquired if I would be back at the park the following Tuesday. I said yes and left. This marked the beginning of my infidelity, as I failed to inform Ree of my visit to Leonard's apartment when I returned home that night. Instead, I became even more attentive to my husband and got ready. The following Tuesday, I met Leonard again in the park and we talked for nearly 2 hours. Toward the end of our conversation, I informed him that we needed to distance ourselves from our friendship because we had crossed the line. He acknowledged this but expressed that it felt so right and that we shared an incredible chemistry. Unfortunately, I agreed with him. Things escalated quickly from there, and the following Tuesday, I spent the afternoon with Leonard at his apartment and became physically intimate with him. Surprisingly, that evening, I felt minimal guilt or remorse for my actions. Instead, I felt a heightened desire and passion for my husband, and we shared a wonderful night together. Reflecting on this now, I am completely disgusted with myself, but I must be honest, Leonard and I continued to rendezvous at his apartment every Tuesday and Thursday until my D-Day this past Friday, which was almost 2 hours. I should have realized that something was wrong with my husband 2 weeks ago when I noticed a sudden change in his behavior, but I was too caught up in the affair to notice or perhaps to care. That's when my husband's behavior changed. He began responding with short answers and avoided engaging in conversation with me. He also refused my requests for intimacy on several occasions and no longer initiated it himself. During this time he began working late, often not returning home until after 8:00 p.m. He claimed that he and his colleagues were engrossed in an important presentation and that they were all eating takeout at the office. While such important projects did occasionally occur, it was unusual for them to continue for 2 consecutive weeks. When I questioned him about this, he simply explained that it was a highly classified project that would be completed on Friday. I accepted his explanation and felt relieved to anticipate the return of my loving husband. He assured me that he would make up for lost time and promised an emotionally charged weekend ahead. However, the emotions I encountered on Friday were not what I had expected upon arriving home. Upon arriving home, I discovered a large manila envelope taped to the door with my name on it. Upon opening it, I was shocked to find numerous pages of messages exchanged between Leonard and me on the fake Facebook accounts we had created to communicate during our affair. As I read through these messages, I burst into tears and struggled to catch my breath. It was so overwhelming that I even considered making a phone call. I threw the envelope on the floor and began pacing the house, unsure of who had left it at my door. Was it Leonard, or perhaps my husband, or could it have been someone else? My questions were answered when I entered the bedroom, and there, in the middle of the bed, was a white gift box with a large red bow and a card label with my name in the first line and my husband's name in the second line. At that moment I realized my world had collapsed and I just lay on the bed sobbing uncontrollably into a pillow. After about an hour of thinking about my next steps and rehearsing what I would say to my husband, I called him but he did not answer. I paced the house anxiously wondering how to handle the situation. I then tried to contact my daughter and son both by phone and by text, but they also did not respond, which struck me as unusual. Shortly thereafter I received a text message from my husband informing me that he was aware of everything, as were our children, his extended family, and as of 15 minutes ago my own parents. He explained that he had moved out and signed a lease for an apartment, adding that I would be hearing from his attorney soon. After reading his message, I cried for hours, stopping only to answer a phone call from my mother, but instead of giving me comfort, she launched into a tirade without allowing me to say a word. Finally hanging up on me, I repeatedly tried to call her back, but she refused to pick up. I reached my father and he answered. When I asked to speak to my mother, he informed me that she had nothing more to say to me. At that moment my father went on to express his deep disappointment and shame in me, admitting that he never imagined that his own daughter could commit such an act. His own daughter could commit such an act. His words shattered me and I could not hold back my tears as I apologized repeatedly. He remained silent as I continued to speak. When I had finished pouring out my emotions, he advised me to compose myself and strive to do better. I responded with a simple, "Okay Daddy, I will," and we ended our conversation. At this point, I felt too humiliated to confide in my friends or any other family member, so I retreated to my bedroom and cried alone. I decided it was necessary to call Leonard, both to inform him that our relationship had ended and to seek a comforting presence during this difficult time. When I dialed his number, he immediately questioned why I was using my phone instead of our fake Facebook accounts. I didn't mince words and told him that my husband had discovered our affair and was seeking a divorce. My response was that I didn't know how he found out. Leonard inquired further and asked if my husband had stumbled upon my Facebook account. I speculated that he must have. Leonard pressed on and asked if my husband knew who he was. I confirmed that he did, as my husband had mentioned Leonard by name in the text message. The message I received, Leonard's response was a series of expletives and he began shouting the FW loudly, causing his to start barking. After his outburst, he composed himself and stated, "Okay, I'm sorry this happened, but you were careless. Lead'n sever all ties, delete our accounts and phone numbers and hopefully you can salvage your marriage." I was both surprised and disgusted by his lack of courage, and I simply responded with an "okay," that was it. There was no apology for wrecking my marriage, no inquiries about how he could make amends, no expressions of gratitude, just self-preservation. How could I have been so stupid as to cheat on Ree with anyone, let alone someone as repulsive as Leonard? I'm writing this at 3 o'clock in the morning. On a Tuesday morning, which should give you an idea of my state of mind. I have taken the entire week off to focus on trying to get my husband and children to talk to me so that I can apologize and work on healing and moving on. Does anyone have any suggestions on what to do next? My spirit is crushed and I feel completely alone. I have lost everything except my son. As a result of my actions, have any of you who have strayed experienced being cut off so quickly by your spouses? I mean, Ree is gone and wants nothing to do with me. I understand how hurt he is, but to completely remove me from his life and initiate divorce proceedings over this one stupid mistake seems incredibly harsh. Please help. Update. I'm back here because I need an outlet to deal with the intense pain I am currently experiencing. I just had a conversation with my kids while they were on their way back to town. After 3 days of them ignoring my calls and texts, I was hoping they would call to talk and allow me to apologize. Unfortunately, what I got was a barrage of insults, disrespect and hurtful names. These were words I had never heard either of them use before. Libby in particular was exceptionally harsh and it seemed to influence her brother's behavior. I apologized, emphasizing that I had been manipulated by Leonard and felt somewhat victimized by this guy, and reminding them of the years I had been a great mother and a good wife to their father. However, my daughter insisted that I had once been great but had now become terrible, the worst, and she ended the call by telling me that she and her brother would be spending the weekend with their father and that I should not expect to see them at all, which made me very sad, especially since Sunday is Mother's Day and my children and husband used to make that day special. For me, this year I will be alone with my dog, who at least still loves me unconditionally. I understand that much of what Libby and Craig are feeling is the initial anger one feels after being betrayed, but I still can't help but feel terrible about their reaction. I'm not looking for sympathy here, just some words of encouragement. I wanted to provide an update as I have received many requests to do so. I have been attending individual counseling for 2 weeks now and it has been quite helpful. My counselor is a wonderful woman who has given me the courage to move forward. She explained that at this point in my life I have done everything I can to help myself. I have done everything I can to mend relationships with my family, the best course of action now is to step back and wait. If they come back it means we always had and will have love, if they don't it suggests they never really loved me. She also recommended transcendental meditation, which I started last week. It has brought me a greater sense of peace and inner calm. I feel more in control of my mind than ever before, so this is where things stand in my world at the moment. I will provide more updates as needed. In my next update I hope to report that my husband and children have welcomed me back, and once again, a happy family update 3. It's been a while, but I'm here with an update. Get ready because I have a lot to share, including some good and bad news. A few weeks after my last update, I discovered that I was pregnant. Yes, at the age of 38, I became pregnant after more than 15 years of trying to have a third child. This news was both shocking and overwhelming that I was filled with joy at the prospect of having a baby, but I was also terrified at the thought that it might be Leonard's child. My first instinct was to tell Ree, but I realized that if I did that and the baby wasn't his, I would lose him forever. Also, if the baby turned out to be Leonard's, I didn't want to keep it. If I terminated the pregnancy and Ree ever found out, he would never forgive me because he is against such procedures, so here goes. What I did, I contacted a DNA clinic and inquired if they could do a prenatal DNA test without needing the father's saliva. The lab said it was possible, but only with certain other body samples, which I didn't have. The only potential sample was hair follicles. I found a few on my husband's brush, but there weren't nearly enough for a complete sample, so I hit a dead end. My contingency plan was to contact Leonard and ask him to participate in and pay for a prenatal DNA test, but he had blocked me and deleted his Facebook account, so I decided to visit his workplace and catch him when he arrived. When he saw me, he first tried to ignore me and then asked in a disgusted tone what I was doing there. He expressed his disinterest in talking to me further and apologized for being a factor in the internal breakdown of my marriage. I thought, yeah right, why didn't you think of that before you relentlessly pursued me? Without hesitation I blurted out that I was pregnant and he was the father. Pregnant and that he was the father, he responded by saying, "Oh, no, you're not going to trap me with a baby, I'm familiar with this tactic." I told him to watch his back. I told him that if he didn't want me to go into his office and immediately report his inappropriate behavior to HR, he would have to comply with my request. I then instructed him to schedule and pay for a paternity test. and provided him with the contact information for the clinic. I made it clear that if he did not take these steps within 48 hours, I would proceed with reporting the situation to his Human Resources Department. That evening, Leonard unblocked my phone and sent me a text message stating that he had scheduled an appointment for the following Tuesday at 10 a.m. The next day, I received the same text message, 00 a.m. Knowing that I had the day off, we both arrived at the clinic office, but there was no conversation between us. They called Leonard in first, where they took his saliva sample, and then it was my turn and they took a blood sample. It took a week to get the results, but it was worth it because Leonard was not the father. Overwhelmed with joy, I fell to my knees and thanked the Lord for the blessing my husband and I with another precious child we had longed for. I was eager to share the news with Ree, but I still had no way to contact him as he had blocked me and I remained unaware of his whereabouts. At this point my children were still avoiding me and barely communicating with me. We set up the call and I delivered the good news, but instead of sharing in the joy of welcoming a new sibling, they both reacted with bitterness and unkindness toward me, immediately jumping to the conclusion that the baby belonged to Leonard. My son then asked how I could be so sure, and I explained that I had calculated it based on the estimated date of conception at that time. I did not have the actual date of conception, and I did not want to mention the DNA test with Leonard, so I chose to clarify it in this way. My daughter then accused me of deliberately trapping her father by getting pregnant. I asked her how this could be possible, since all of this happened before your father even knew about my involvement with Leonard. She replied, reiterating her point, accusing me of deliberately getting her father pregnant in case he discovered my affair. I refuted her claim, insisting that it was absurd, and reminding her that her father and I had been trying to conceive for years. After much discussion, they finally agreed to talk to her father and ask him to call me, 00 p.m. The following day I received a call from Riza's attorney. She left me a voicemail and I immediately called her back. She explained that she was representing her client and had been informed of my pregnancy along with my claim that the baby belonged to her client. When I heard this I could not hold back my emotions and began to cry uncontrollably. I begged her to allow me to speak directly with my husband. The attorney was empathetic and understanding but remained firm. After I had spoken to her I readily agreed and offered to arrange it as soon as possible, even volunteering to pay for it out of my savings. The attorney asked me to make the appointment and specified that her client would provide his saliva sample at a time when I would not be present. The paternity test was conducted, and early this morning the results came in conclusively confirming that Ree is the father. Although I already knew this, receiving the official results brought me immense relief. I am working to move on from the terrible nightmare that Leonard has dragged me into in the past, and I am eager to rebuild my relationship and trust with my family, and I am very grateful for all the support and encouragement you have given me to help me through this difficult time. Final update: I have received numerous requests for an update, so I am here to share how things have been progressing with my family. Things have been progressing for my family and me, although we are still a work in progress. Each day brings us closer to rebuilding the family we were before Leonard selfishly caused damage and my mistakes contributed to it. First, Ree and I went through with the divorce despite my pleading and begging, and even with the confirmation that I was carrying his child. I had high hopes after the DNA test confirmed that he was the father, eagerly anticipating talking to him and being held in his arms while he assured me that everything would be okay, but that moment never came. Instead, we had a meeting at his lawyer's office that was taped. During this meeting, he informed me of his decision to proceed with the divorce and expressed his desire for us to transition into a good parenting relationship with co-op. I could not hold back my tears and asked for a moment to compose myself when I returned. Eventually our divorce was finalized and we divided assets and custody of our young child equally. I received 1 year of alimony and ongoing child support. Ree also agreed to pay 50% of the taxes, insurance and utilities for our family. In late January, our precious little boy was born, and he is indeed a miracle child. Not only did he grace our lives after 15 years of trying, but he has also been instrumental in reuniting our family. Since his birth, both of my kids have come home from college every weekend and take turns holding the baby. Ree, my husband, has also been a constant presence in my home since the birth. He stays with me until I put the baby down for the night, and just yesterday he brought takeout dinner for the two of us, and although we didn't eat together, I see this as a positive development. He and I are on very friendly terms, and we haven't brought up the affair or the divorce, and I haven't pressured him or discussed the possibility of us reconciling. I am still in individual counseling and my therapist advised me to give him space and not discuss our relationship, which I have done, and it seems to be working every day. I feel like I am slowly regaining the love and connection with my husband. I have used a similar approach with Libby and Craig if I am successful. To win Rye back as a husband, or even as a life partner, I am committed to never jeopardizing our relationship again. He, along with my children, mean the world to me, and I will do everything in my power to show them how much I appreciate and cherish them. I don't have any more updates at the moment, while I wish things could go back to the way they used to be. I understand that is not possible, so I am focusing on appreciating what I currently have, which in my opinion is quite wonderful. This may be my last post, unless Ree and I decide to officially reconcile, in which case I will return to share the good news with everyone. Once again, a big thank you to everyone who has supported me throughout this journey. Alright, that was a fun story. Now let's move on to another exciting one. Stay tuned and let's dive in. Hello, I just need to share what has been bothering me lately and could use an outside perspective. I'll try to sum it up for you. In the end, in February, my husband, 33 male and I, 31 female, had been married for a year. When he had to go on an important business trip to the UK for 3 weeks, unfortunately things got extended and he and his team had to stay an extra 2 weeks to finalize the deal. This was the first time we had been apart since we got together 6 years ago, so I was dealing with a whirlwind of emotions. Emotional when things don't go as planned, and that's a trait I've always had, and I'll admit that I can be a challenge to live with at times. In addition, I'm dealing with some mental health issues that contribute to my insecurities and paranoia, especially when it comes to the fear that my husband might be cheating on me. I even went so far as to call his office to confirm that his entire team was indeed still in the UK. During this time of separation, I struck up a friendship with our neighbor, and one night after watching a movie together, things took a turn and I realized that I was letting things get out of control. That night our neighbor became physically affectionate, but my fear caused me to stop things from progressing. But the next day I revisited the situation because I didn't want to regret not knowing where things could lead, and they did lead to a full-blown affair over the next few months. Throughout the next few encounters, whether at my place or his, I continued to be concerned about my husband's situation, but I did not feel an overwhelming sense of guilt, which led me to wonder if there was something wrong with me. Things took a messy turn when my husband returned home without warning in early March, thinking he was going to surprise me, as if that was a good idea. I suppose it's somewhat understandable given that I wasn't prepared for my husband's unexpected return, otherwise I would have cleaned up, especially the bed, which was a dead giveaway when he inquired. I simply explained that I had friends over because I was feeling lonely. We played games, had a few drinks, and it was nothing out of the ordinary. I'm not sure he bought my explanation, but after seeing the state of things, he decided to do something about it. I tried to dissuade him as I knew there could be incriminating evidence lying around, and indeed there was. He discovered a bag in the trash containing a used condom, its wrapper and a toothbrush. My heart sank and my hands trembled. It felt unreal. Somehow I managed to keep my composure and informed my husband that there were 2 couples among the friends I had invited over, implying that things had gotten intimate. My husband stared at me for a long moment. My husband's expression changed to one of disappointment, hurt, anger, and fear all at once. I'm not sure what came over me, but the next thing I knew I was on my knees begging for forgiveness and another chance, but deep down I'm not even sure I deserve one. I realize I made a huge mistake. I tried to explain that it was a one-time thing, driven by my vulnerability during the time of the affair. My husband laid out 3 conditions for us to move on. It was a one-time thing, it was not premeditated, it was just a foolish, impulsive mistake, perhaps made under the influence of alcohol. He made it clear that if all of these conditions were not met, he would leave. He also asked to review my phone conversations with the other guy from the past few months to make sure there were no plans or signs of romance, but I had deleted those conversations without any backups. Frankly, if he had seen those messages, it might have been the end of our marriage anyway. My instincts tell me he might be better off without me. I'm considering filing for divorce. I've heard he's already consulted a lawyer, and I'd rather be the one to file than him serving me. So what are your thoughts? I know I wronged him, but I believe there must be a way to navigate through this. Couples face more difficult situations every day and still manage to maintain their relationships. I'm open to your advice and eager to hear your perspectives. Update. Hi everyone, I wanted to provide an update on the situation I discussed earlier. I'm grateful for all of your advice and support during this difficult time. Having this community to turn to has been a great help. After some deep thought and more conversations, my husband and I decided to sit down and talk again. I realized it was time to be completely honest about everything, which meant sharing the truth about the affair that occurred during his business trip. It was a difficult conversation, but I felt it was necessary for both of us to fully grasp what had happened. I confessed my mistakes, acknowledged my wrongdoings, and admitted that I had not considered his feelings. It was an intense and emotional moment, but I felt that complete transparency was crucial. My husband experienced a range of emotions, feeling hurt, angry, and confused as he tried to process what I had revealed. He asked for some time to reflect, and I agreed to give him the space to process everything. He asked me to leave the house, explaining that he needed time to figure out our future, but I refused because despite my actions, I am still his wife and have legal rights to the house. I could not just leave without a plan at this time. Tensions are high and emotions are still raw in our situation. He has tried various methods to get me to leave, including becoming very angry, having violent outbursts, resorting to guilt trips, and generally manipulating me. However, I have reached a point where I have nothing to lose, so I have told him in no uncertain terms that I will not be moving out. I recognize that he needs time to process everything and make a decision about our future, but he needs to do it with me in the house. Don't get me wrong, I am deeply sorry for the pain I've caused, and I am fully committed to taking responsibility for my mistakes. I don't think this should be the end of our story. I have much more to offer, definitely not to the neighbor. Just to be clear, I understand that there is a long road ahead. I truly believe that every couple faces their own unique challenges and that it is possible to work through difficult situations if both parties are willing to put in the effort. I am still hopeful that there will be an opportunity to mend our relationship, but I am also preparing for the possibility that my husband may decide that separating once again is the best option for us. I want to express my gratitude for your support, advice, and understanding. Please keep us in your thoughts and send positive vibes our way. Update. Hello, I'm back with another update. My husband served me with divorce papers and it was a devastating blow. I had held on to a slim hope, but it seems he is determined to move forward with the divorce. Although we are still living under the same roof, there is palpable tension and he has been avoiding me as if I have a contagious disease. Our families have been informed and understandably they have not been supportive of my actions and decisions. I am navigating this difficult situation on my own, and it has been incredibly challenging. The thought of divorce is frightening, not only because of the potential social shame, but also because of the impact it would have on my life. This fear may have contributed to my strong reaction when my husband confronted me about leaving the house. I care about him, and I'm beginning to understand that I have to take responsibility for my actions. The idea of us not being together is painful, but it may be a consequence I have to face. I have been wanting to start a family, and in the last few days I have been feeling well, so there is a glimmer of hope on that front. I realize that given the circumstances, it may not be possible now, but I also believe that my husband would not abandon his child, so perhaps having a baby could be a solution. I'm going to the lab soon to get a pregnancy test done. I've tried home kits but they've all come back negative. I'm anxious and feel sick just thinking about what could happen if I'm not actually pregnant. Is this really the end for us? Edit. I'm not pregnant.